Hey, welcome back. This is Pl Sql Triggers, and here we are. So when we talk about Pl Sql Triggers, we are still referring it to named Pl Sql blocks, which are stored in the database. And when we talk about unnamed, so we have named blocks or named Pl Sql blocks and unnamed Pl Sql blocks. So when we talk about Pl Sql triggers, here we are talking about a named one because we are supposed to attach a name every time we create a trigger. So we can have different triggers for different scenarios or different events, and they can be, these triggers are always there to be invoked or fired for it to, to give some insight or some messages. Now, so a trigger is always a named Pl Sql blocks, which are stored in the database. And another way you can also define a trigger is a specialized, or triggers are specialized programs or specialized stored programs which execute implicitly when a triggering event occurs. So we are talking about specialized stored programs. They will always be there unless they are deactivated. Once created, they will always be there unless they are deactivated. Now, when we talk about these events, if you remember, we're talking about whenever triggering events occur. So what are these events that are being, termed as triggering events occurring? For example, we have a DML statement which acts as an event. When we talk about DML, remember it's a short form for data manipulation language. And these are some reserved keywords which are very useful in Oracle database. And for example, we have the select keyword, we have the update keyword, we have the delete keyword, we also have the insert keyword. So you can restrict different keywords, or for example, if you want to put an event or assign a trigger to an event such as insert or update or delete or select, then you're supposed to use a type of trigger called DML triggers. So those are based on DML statements. We also have other events that occur when it comes to a DDL statement. So whenever you're using the create, the alter, the drop, the truncate, as long as it's a data definition language, that qualifies to become an event. We also have those triggers that can be referred to as the system triggers. This always occurs from the system point of view, especially when the system or a user tries to log in. So when you're logging into the system, you're trying to sign out from the system, there are triggers that monitors. Those are the triggers that monitors. And now when it comes to the types of triggers, the same events can also form up the types of triggers. And you may find a lot of different scenarios. For example, we have the DML triggers. Those are attached to the DMLs or the select statements, the update, the delete, and insert. We also have the DDL triggers. Those are attached to the DDL commands. We also have the system or database event triggers. So these are meant to allow you capture how the system is logged in or how the system is logged out, or any user coming in. And of course, we have the instead of triggers. These triggers are basically meant to redirect a certain process or processing of select statements and so many things. So when it comes to these triggers, I don't want to get into my detail because once we have the practicality of these triggers, I think we will be in a better position to understand them. So I want to keep it more simple, less theory, probably more practical. And yeah. So what is the importance of having these Pl Sql triggers? What is the usefulness of triggers? Number one, triggers are useful when you want to enforce, especially if business rules are to be enforced. So they're basically meant to enforce business rules. In other words, they are basically meant to gain strong control over the security of the system and how the data is being transacted. They're also used to collect statistical information Remember, as the usage, or I'm explaining the uses, this is how the triggers are being defined. If you are to define a trigger that ensure that business rules are followed, then you can create that particular trigger. You can also talk about how to gain strong control over the security. We have a way on how to do that. If you want to collect statistical information using a trigger, you can still do that. If you want to automatically generate values, then you can still do that. And that is a use of a trigger. And lastly, we want to prevent invalid transactions. So invalid transactions, then that also comes into play. So when you talk about prevent invalid transactions, for example, if the business days or the business working days is Monday to Fridays or any other day, and probably you want to restrict any update, any delete, any insert into a particular table before, let's say between, before 8 a.m. in the morning and after 6 p.m. in the evening. So how can you do that? So it means that for your scenario, you expect anyone who wants to change or manipulate the database to do it between 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. After that, or before that, nothing will happen, because a trigger is there to ensure that you abide by the rules given. So we will actually see that how it works. So when it comes to now using a trigger, let's say, for example, from a very simple point of view, we're going to have an example, and I want to create this table. Create table heroes into bracket. Let me have only name, voucher 220. Okay, let's say drop. Okay, let me just have that. So I'm creating a new table. Describe heroes. Yeah, there it is. And of course, this one is a table which has only a single column. So from there, I need to set, just use uppercase. I need to set server output on. And now I want to create a trigger. So this trigger is meant to give us a message whenever we perform an insert, whenever we insert a value into this table called heroes. So here it means that I will create my trigger this way. Create trigger. I want this trigger to insert. Let me call this trigger hero. Let's say hero insert. Hero insert. Just to know that this is the name of the trigger. So I want to connect it to this particular table. But this name does not have any connection with the table. Then we want the trigger to fire before. So we always have before and after. We always have before and after. So we can say before insert on which table? Heroes. So this is the table. This is the table. Then put that and say for each row, because we can have so many rows, we want this trigger to be enabled. And then we can come down here and say declare. Now I want to create a variable here called user. So voucher 220. And then I want to begin. Then I want to say select user into v_user from the dummy table. From the dummy table. So this table is always there by default. So if you want to perform some calculations, some mathematical, or just to test something, you can always use the dual table. Then from there, I want to capture where is this. Sorry, let me just capture this. I want to capture something here instead of me typing it. Okay, so I thought it is there, DBMS. underscore output dot put underscore line. Then you can say you just inserted a line. So we can say Mr. and then talk about that. And for this matter, at some point, I have a simple, which is, I don't know, within my laptop, so don't worry about that. So I need this simple. This is the simple I'm looking for. So it's actually called a pipe simple. And then just say v underscore user, which is what? Which is this one. And then put that, and then we end. So for this case, my trigger is created. My trigger is created. So this trigger is meant to insert a value. Whenever I insert a value to this particular table called heroes, I must get this. So the trigger must always be fired to give me this message. Now, this dual table, user, you see, the user I'm connected to, the active session I'm connected to is HR. So I expect it to tell me whenever I manage to insert a value to this table, it should tell me that you just inserted a line Mr. HR. It should actually tell me like that. So here, let's test it. So insert into, so remember we have a table called heroes. Into heroes values, which of course it is this one. So we expect to insert a name. Into bracket, here we can just say Sammy. Press enter. Now you can say you just inserted a line Mr. HR. Now my trigger is supposed to be fired before insert. So before I get this one row created, then I must get the trigger to be fired, or the trigger fired before that. Now for the update is actually the same thing. For the update, you can just use the same thing for the update. So it's only some few things you want to change. So for the update, we're going to do this using the same concept. Okay, so before insert, this time down I'm saying before update on heroes, and then we can just change this answer. You just update it. You just update it. Those are the only things we need to change. The same table we want to change. So if we change, remember we are connecting this trigger to this particular table. If we insert a table or a value into employees table, then this trigger will not be fired because this trigger is not connected to any other table apart from heroes. So let me save. Now you can see trigger updated. Now let us update. Remember we inserted Sammy. So we want to update this name to Mark. So I'll just come and say update, update heroes, set name equals to Mark, where name equals to Sammy. You see, you just updated a line, Mr. HR. So one row updated, one row updated. So if you go back and select that table, then you realize that the name has changed from Sammy to Mark. Now, what happens now if you want to combine? Now I want to bring this. What happens if you want to combine now? Because you may end up, instead of writing a trigger for each DML, why don't we combine all of them? So how can we do this in simple terms? How can we do this in simple terms? So let's see. So I'll get rid of that. So this is the disadvantage of copying, because you have to go a long way getting rid of all the lines. So there's no way that you can be able to copy without these names. Okay. So this means that if I want to include all the DMLs, I will just say before, let me start with before insert or update or delete, you see, or delete on heroes. So here I'm involving all of them and I'm involving them with or. So insert or update or delete on heroes. Then when it comes to this part, we are supposed to use an if statement. We are supposed to use an if statement. So you can say if inserting, you see, if inserting, then let me just have it here. Then insert, you just inserted a line, mister. And then of course from there, then we have again for me to copy all this. And then go down here. Now, because we've already if started, then I don't need to specify if, I can just say else if. So the second one is updating. Then I can just come and say, you just updated. So I can just use my short messages to capture. I can come back again, copy this, put it here. And for this time round, else if deleting. So here I can say deleted. And then after that, because it is an if statement, I must end it with end if. And that is it. So now if I save it, close it, press that and look at that, the trigger created. So it means that if I have to perform an insert, that means I want to insert into this table. If I insert this table, I am ready to get this message. If I updated, I'm ready to capture the updated line. If I delete, I am ready to do that. And that is how you do it. So now, if I just do, let's say, insert into heroes, values into bracket, let's say Samuel, look at that, inserted align Mr. HR. Now, if I update heroes, that means I want to set the name. Set name, I want to put it Obama, and then where name equals to Samuel. Look at that, updated align Mr. HR. What happens if I want to delete? Delete from heroes where, delete from heroes where name equals to Obama now. Look at that, deleted align Mr. HR. And that is the simplest. This is the simplest on how you can combine, triggers, how you can combine triggers. DMLs, all DMLs at once in a trigger. So that is the simplest you can go by. Now, I want to show you something else. What happens if, for example, we want to restrict? What happens if we want to restrict? Assume that for any transaction to be done within the company, it should be done between 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. If you try to do it at 4:01 p.m., it will deny you to do. So we are putting something called a restrictions. We are putting a restriction, or we are trying to restrict. You see, we are trying to restrict any of these DML using a trigger. So let me just type create or replace trigger. I want to put it, let's say restrict DML. That means I'm talking about either you want to use insert or update or delete. Now, then we can say before insert or update or delete. I want to restrict either of these. If someone needs to perform before 8 and after 4, this person must be restricted. But in between, he must be allowed to do so. Then on eros. So you have to specify the table to connect to. Then you can say begin. So if you remember the issue of the conversion functions in SQL, we had something called the to-char. So I need to convert the sysdate into a character, sysdate, and then I want to connect it to have in 24-hour clock system. This is the MI for minutes, then into bracket, then I can say not between 09 that and so I'm giving in so we are talking about from 8. So I want from 8 a.m. to, let's say, 6. You see, 6 p.m. That is, I mean 4 p.m. not 6 p.m. Then we want to raise a user-defined exception. So application underscore error into bracket. So we're going to attach 1, 2, 4 or 5 even, or 5, whichever. Then we are supposed to say you are, okay, for this message, you can, or you are allowed to manipulate data. You manipulate data, okay, data only between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. 4 p.m. 4 p.m. And then you just do that and close it. Then here you just say and if, then end. Look at that. Trigger created. So this means that if you look at my time right now, if you look at the time on my system, it is actually 3:33 p.m. So it's not yet 4 p.m. So it means that if I'm to insert, if I'm to operate, to perform any of these operations, insert or update or delete, I am allowed to do so because the time I'm still operating under the time frame. So which is few minutes to 4 p.m. So let me insert into eros values into bracket. Let's say grace. You see, I'm able to do that. Now remember, we also have this trigger which we had already created, and this trigger is still in place. It's still active. But the only way you can deactivate a trigger is to drop a trigger. You see? So if I want to drop a trigger, I can just say drop trigger. What was the name of the trigger? Hero underscore, I think it was trigger hero underscore, let's say trigger, let me check. Okay, trigger. Okay, we will look into it. But you have to do what? You have to drop a trigger if you don't want it to work. Now, so if I come back and update the same table, I am able to insert. If you look at this, I am able to insert one row because the timing is within the frame. Now, if I update eros set name equals to Jack, where name equals to Grace. You see, updated align Mr. HR. So that means I'm allowed. If I decide to delete from eros where name equals to Jack. You see, deleted a line. Why? Because based on the trigger, I'm allowed to operate between the time given, between the time frame, between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Now, my time is 15:35. That is 3:35 p.m. I want to readjust this time. I want to put it beyond 4 p.m. So I'll just come here, date, so that we can see what happens. Change. So I want to put it 4:35. 4:35, that is 16:35 p.m. Hours. So you can see that the time has changed in my system. The time has changed in my system. So let us perform an insert. Let us perform an insert. So I'll just repeat. This time around, I want to insert, let's say Mary. If I press enter, look at the error I'm getting. You are allowed to manipulate data only between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. Now, let me adjust again before to a time which is before 8 a.m. So I can come here and say, I want something like, okay, we can say, we can have like 7:36. So this one is 7:36 a.m. If I go back to my and try insert, now you can see again, you are not allowed to manipulate data because my time is before 8 and the time was even after 8, after 4, it's not allowed. So let us readjust it to the correct time. So now we know that it is 15, then change it. And this time round, if I come back here and press enter, now you can see that it's acceptable. So this is how the triggers work. And this is how it is used to enforce business rules. It is used to prevent or just to prevent or trace invalid, what do you call it? The invalid transactions or prevent invalid transactions. That is how it's basically meant to gain strong control over the security of the system. So with this said, I think this is the end of it. You can still now explore more on triggers, explore on different data types, and see what happens. So those are the triggers in place. And again, probably one more example. What happens if I want to create a trigger? And I think I'm going to, you can even copy this one instead of me going a long way. Let me copy this. Now, we all know that when I have this select, let's say first, okay, let me have employee underscore ID, first underscore name, salary from employees, where department ID equals to that. Now we all have these people. We all have these people, but I want us to concentrate with Karen. Okay, with Dan. Let's concentrate with Dan. I want to create a trigger such that if there's an update on this salary, the update should always be something that adds the salary or increase the salary. We want to create a trigger that restricts if somebody does a wrong update, such that the value is being decreased. The trigger should be there to be raised. But when it is increased, then no problem. So we want to talk about the 114, which is Dan. So what happens if the value goes beyond 20,000? It is accepted. What happens if the value comes before 20,000? It is not accepted. So what I will do is I will ed, and then I want to paste it so that you can still make some adjustments here. Okay. Okay. So I want only update. So what happens here? We are going to say before update of. Before update of what? Before update of salary. So since we are specifying a specific column, we want to create a trigger, and this trigger we can actually call it what? Let's say, remember this one is a restrict underscore DML. Remember the names. So here we can talk about check salary. Check salary. We want to have a trigger that checks salary. Check salary. And I think we will attach to employees table. We are attaching it to employees table because that is the only table we have, a salary. And yeah, what happens again? So instead of having all this information, you can just say full colon new dot salary. Whenever the new salary is less than the updated one, or the updated salary is less than the old one. So we need to have old dot salary, then raise underscore applicant underscore error. This one I want to put like 6, and then you can say updated updated salary. Updated salary cannot be lesser than the current salary. So if the updated salary is less than the current salary, then it should not be accepted. If it is greater than the actual salary, then it is accepted. So it means that based on like save it now, based on then, we need to have something which is above, and you can see the message: updated salary cannot be lesser than the current salary. So if at all we want to update the salary with a value less than this, it should not be accepted. If you want to give something higher, then it's okay. So let's just execute our trigger and press enter. New or all references not allowed in table level triggers. Okay, let me just do it again. So what happens here? Okay, so okay, let me just cut and create this table. I think the reason is, let me create table emp 900. This is the, okay, employees 1 or employees 0. Okay, employees 1 as I want to select star. Okay, I want to select employee ID, first underscore name, and okay, and salary from employees. So I'm creating a table here. So if I describe a table employees underscore 1, so I have this. So if I have to do this, let's say employee ID from employees underscore 1. Okay, so the department ID, invalid identifier, let's say 90. Which one, where? Oh, yeah, so it's not anywhere here. Okay, we can just do this. Let me just get rid of, let's say where employee ID equals to 114. Yeah, so we have this person called Dan. And I think we're going to make some adjustments on this table. So our new table now is employees 1. Okay, so let me just come and paste it. What happened? Okay, so let me go back. Let me capture this information again. Okay, it should work. So can begin here, 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 and then here. So first of all, let me just have this. Let me call this check_sal. So the trigger is called check_sal before update of salary on employees_1. Then begin if full::new dot salary is less than the old dot salary, then raise application. So you can always have a message. So then if, yeah, so let's save it. New or all references not allowed in table level triggers. In table level triggers. Okay, let me show errors. Okay, no error. So before update of salary on. Okay, so let me just make one adjustment. So here you can say, let's say for each row. Yeah, let me, because we're talking about a specific row. So that table has so many rows. Yeah, trigger created. So the trigger here means that it's supposed to, if you're to update the actual value, or if you're to update the value to be greater than the actual value, then it's accepted. If it comes below that, then it's going to be not accepted. So for example, if I can come back here, we want this person for the 20,000. So let us update employees_1 set salary. I want to give to 30,000, where employee_ID equals to 114. You see, one row updated. So if I come back and look at it, you can see now that we have the salary has actually been pushed from 20,000 to 30,000. So the actual value now is 30,000. What happens if we want to come back to 29,000 or 25,000? So let's see. So I'll do that. Now this one, I'm going to put 26,000, which is below this value. So if I come back here and say where employee ID equals to 114, press enter. Now you can see that the trigger has been raised, that the updated salary cannot be lesser than the current salary. Error during execution of trigger, HR checks sal. And this is how we do it. This is how we do it. So ensure that you follow the rule. This is how it's being created. And because I'm talking about a table with multiple records, I'm supposed to put this for each row, Now, so the final thing now to show you is how to drop triggers. If you want to drop a trigger, if we can start from this, check_sal, you see trigger dropped. What happens now if I want to update? Yeah, so it means that the trigger is no more. You also have this trigger, is it called restrict_DMF? Yeah, trigger dropped. So this is how you deactivate some triggers. And this is all about Pl Sql triggers. So see you on the next video. Thank you.